When I was 8 years old, I stopped asking my mother for hugs. I remember the exact day. It was after a school play. I had one line, just one, but I had practiced it for weeks in front of the bathroom mirror. I wore a crooked paper crown and held a cardboard sword, proud as a lion. After the final bow, I ran off stage straight into my mother's arms, expecting the kind of praise that other parents were showering on their kids. Instead, she looked down at me, unimpressed, and asked, "Why did you speak so fast? No one could understand you." That was the day I learned that trying harder wouldn't win her love. From then on, I observed the world from the sidelines of my own home. While my younger brother Daniel basked in our mother's attention like a sunflower chasing light, I lived in the shadows, unnoticed, unremarkable, unnecessary. Daniel was everything I wasn't: charming, athletic, effortlessly adored. He won spelling bees and soccer tournaments. He had the kind of grin that made people melt. Our mother, Olivia Blackwell, was the epitome of a devoted parent, at least to him. To me, she was a critic with a permanent frown. "You're always daydreaming, Amelia," she'd snap. "You'll never get anywhere if you don't toughen up. Daniel needs silence to focus. Go do something quiet." So I did. I read books. I learned how to disappear into wallpaper. I learned how to make myself small. But small wasn't enough. I had to be invisible. Our house in suburban Pennsylvania looked perfect from the outside. A white colonial with navy shutters and a porch swing that Daniel loved to rock on during summer nights. Inside, it smelled like lemon polish and cold. Dinners left uneaten by me. Our father, Walter, was a quiet man with hollow eyes and a permanent crease between his brows. He worked late and came home later. When he was around, he hardly spoke unless to ask for the TV remote or comment on the stock market. If he ever noticed the imbalance in our family, he never showed it. He existed like a ghost, present but irrelevant. Often wondered if he saw himself in me, another background figure in the Blackwell household. One winter evening when I was 12, I brought home a report card filled with A's. I placed it proudly on the kitchen counter. That same day, Daniel came home with a trophy from a swim meet. He had taken second place. My mother didn't even glance at my report card. She hugged Daniel, kissed his forehead, and said, "You're amazing, baby. I'm so proud of you." I stood there holding my breath, waiting. But the moment never came. Later, that night I overheard her on the phone with a friend. "Amelia, she's fine. Daniel's the one who's going to do something special with his life." Those words clung to me like a second skin. High school was worse. By then, I had stopped expecting anything from her. I had grown into a quiet teenager who wrote poetry in the margins of textbooks and listened to indie music on a cracked iPod. I worked part-time at a bookstore and spent my evenings in my room, avoiding family dinners. Daniel, meanwhile, became the golden boy of Crestwood High, class president, varsity athlete, early acceptance to Columbia. Our mother wore his achievements like badges of honor, boasting to neighbors, printing every mention of his name in the local paper. Once, I overheard her saying, "I don't know what I'd do without Daniel. He gives me purpose." I don't think she realized I could hear her, or maybe she did, and didn't care. I moved out the moment I graduated. I didn't go far, just across the state line to New Jersey, where I rented a cramped apartment above a laundromat and worked at a library. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I didn't tell anyone from my hometown except my best friend, Layla. She understood me in a way no one else did. I sent my mother a postcard when I moved. It had a picture of a lighthouse. I never got a reply. Years passed. I built a life in quiet increments. New bookshelves, new routines, new scars that didn't hurt as much as they used to. Until one Thursday afternoon, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Something in me knew, even before I answered, that the past had caught up. "Amelia?" The voice was tight, unfamiliar, yet unmistakable. "Mom?" A pause. "I need to talk to you. It's about Daniel." My body stiffened. "What about him?" "He's sick, really sick. He's in the hospital in Philadelphia. Leukemia, they say. They say he needs a transplant, a bone marrow transplant. You're the only possible match." The silence that followed was dense as fog. "You always said I was useless," I whispered. "And now suddenly, I'm not." "I didn't mean it like that." Her voice cracked. I hung up. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, remembering every sting of her words, every look of disappointment. And then I remembered Daniel, laughing as he pushed me into a pool, stealing the last piece of cake, once locking me in the attic during a blackout. But he also once gave me his lucky coin before my driving test. And when I failed, he hugged me anyway. It wasn't black and white. Nothing ever is. The next morning, I packed a small bag and boarded a bus to Philadelphia. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and sadness. I found my way to the hematology wing, where I saw her, my mother, older than I remembered, lines deeper on her face. Her posture stooped. She looked up and saw me. And for the first time in my life, Olivia Blackwell cried in front of me. The sterile, white walls of the hospital made everything feel unreal, like I was walking through a dream stitched together by antiseptic and grief. Nurses moved quietly in soft-soled shoes, their faces calm, neutral, like the keepers of 1,000 private tragedies. I followed my mother through the corridor, each step a clash between memory and obligation. We didn't speak on the way to Daniel's room. She had wiped away the tears by then, reverting to the composed woman I remembered, the one with sharp words and a sharper jawline. The one who saw emotion as weakness unless it was expressed on behalf of her golden child. I wasn't sure what I expected when we walked into the room. Maybe a skeleton in a hospital gown. Maybe a hollow shell of the boy who used to throw footballs across our backyard while I watched from the porch, too afraid to ask if I could play too. What I found was Daniel, pale, yes, and thinner than I remembered, but unmistakably him. His eyes opened slowly when he heard the door. For a moment, confusion clouded his face. Then came recognition. "Amelia?" I nodded. "Hey." A tired, crooked smile pulled at his lips. "Didn't expect to see you." "You and me both." I sat beside his bed, unsure of what to do with my hands. The room was silent, except for the hum of the machines monitoring his vitals. He had IV tubes in both arms and a monitor strapped to his finger. There was a faint beeping every time his heart reminded the world it was still trying. "You look different," he said softly. "So do you." He let out a weak chuckle, which turned into a cough. "I'm glad you came." I looked over at our mother, who stood by the window like a statue. "I didn't come for her." Daniel followed my gaze. His face tightened. "Yeah, she told me what she said to you, over the years." I folded my arms. "She told you? Or you always knew?" His eyes didn't meet mine. That was answer enough. Later, a nurse came in and asked our mother to step outside to sign some forms. As the door closed behind her, the air in the room changed. Daniel turned to me, more serious now. "She shouldn't have said what she did, about you." "She did more than say," I replied. "You know it." He closed his eyes for a moment, nodding. "Yeah, I know." "Then why didn't you say something?" "I was a kid," he said, voice strained. "And then, I guess I liked being the favorite. Who wouldn't?" It was the first honest thing he'd said to me in years. I didn't speak. I couldn't. "I'm sorry," he said, and for a moment I saw the boy who once helped me sneak cookies after bedtime, who stood up for me in second grade when a classmate made fun of my frizzy hair. Maybe that boy never left. Maybe he just forgot how to be my brother. The doctors explained everything later that afternoon. Daniel had acute myeloid leukemia, aggressive, relapsed after chemotherapy. His best, and maybe onlyest chance, was a bone marrow transplant from a compatible donor, and I was a match. A near-perfect match, the doctor said, as if genetics made up for a lifetime of distance. I stared at the printouts, the charts, the percentages. Everything in me screamed no. Not because I didn't care, but because it all felt too fast, too heavy, too undeserved. Why was I suddenly needed now, after a lifetime of being cast aside? "I need time," I said. Our mother opened her mouth, but I raised my hand. Don't. Not now. That night I stayed in a hotel nearby. I didn't go out. I didn't turn on the TV. I lay on the stiff mattress, staring at the popcorn ceiling, haunted by ghosts of every moment I'd wished my mother would ask me to stay, to matter. And now that she had, I didn't know if I could say yes. Layla called. "How bad is it?" she asked gently. "Bad," I said. "They need me to be a donor." Silence. And I'm the only match. More silence. Then, "You don't owe them anything, Amelia." "I know. But I don't want him to die." Layla didn't answer right away. When she finally did, her voice was steady. "Then do it for you, not for her, not even for him. Do it so you can sleep at night." I cried after we hung up, and for once, it felt like it was allowed. The next morning, I returned to the hospital. Daniel was sleeping. My mother was reading a magazine with the intensity of someone trying not to unravel. I stood in front of her. "If I agree to this, I want answers. Real ones." She lowered the magazine slowly. "What kind of answers?" "The truth. About why I was always treated like a stranger in my own house." Her face twitched. She looked down at her hands, then out the window. For a long time I thought she wouldn't speak. Then she did. "You were an accident," she said. The words dropped like stones. "I got pregnant with you when I was 23. I wasn't married yet. Your biological father was someone I didn't love. We weren't even dating. I wanted to give you up, but my parents forced me to keep you. Then I met Walter. He agreed to raise you as his own." My breath caught in my throat. "You're telling me Dad isn't my father?" She nodded. "He never treated you differently. But I didn't know how to love you without seeing all my mistakes. I felt like I was falling into a void. Everything I knew about my family, myself, was cracking. So instead of working through it, you punished me for existing." Tears welled in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Amelia." For the first time, I saw her not as a villain, but as a woman. Broken by fear and guilt. It didn't excuse what she did, but it explained it. I sat beside Daniel that evening while he slept. His chest rose and fell in slow, fragile rhythms. He looked younger like that, peaceful, vulnerable. I thought about all the times I had been invisible, all the years of silence, and how this moment, this choice would define more than just my relationship with my family. It would define who I chose to be. I pressed my hand to his. "Okay," I whispered. "I'll do it." The next day, I signed the consent forms. The documents were thick and filled with language only a lawyer or a doctor would fully understand. But I didn't ask questions. I just picked up the pen and scrawled my name at the bottom of every page. Each stroke felt like a wound reopening. Not because I regretted agreeing, but because I finally understood what I was offering. It wasn't just marrow, it was closure. Maybe forgiveness. Maybe something even deeper. The nurse, a petite woman named Carla, explained the procedure in a calm, practiced tone. "We'll need to do a few more tests to confirm your health. Blood panels, EKG, chest x-ray. After that, you'll start the injections to stimulate stem cell production." "Will it hurt?" I asked. She paused. "You'll be sore. Some flu-like symptoms. Bone pain. But most donors say it's manageable." I nodded. "Okay." Carla smiled. "You're doing a brave thing." I didn't feel brave. I felt like I was floating, untethered in a sea of decisions I never wanted to make. After the consultation, I went to see Daniel. He was awake this time, watching something muted on the hospital television. When he saw me, he smiled, genuinely. Not the performative kind we used to exchange during holidays. "You're still here," he said. "I signed the papers," I replied. His smile faltered. "You didn't have to." "But I did." Silence. "I don't deserve it," he said softly. "No," I said. "You don't." "But maybe I do." Daniel tilted his head. "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe I deserve to know I tried, that I wasn't the person she thought I was, that I'm better than what they saw." He swallowed, hard. You are. I turned my eyes away. Too late to say that now. For the next week, I underwent tests. They poked and scanned and measured every part of me. I stayed in a hotel, alone, with my thoughts, walking the hospital corridors like a ghost at night when I couldn't sleep. I read a lot, drank tea, avoided calls from Layla because I didn't know how to explain the feeling of falling back into a house that never felt like home. One morning, as I sat in the hospital cafe with a lukewarm coffee, my mother approached and slid into the chair across from me. I wanted to say thank you. I didn't look at her. You already did. No, I mean it. This isn't easy for you. I see that. I took a sip and said nothing. She shifted. You know, when Daniel was born, I thought I finally got it right. He was so easy to love. He looked like Walter, acted like him. Everything came naturally. I stared out the window. I didn't know how to love you without guilt, she whispered. Finally, I turned to her. Then you should have let someone else love me, instead of trying to erase me. Her face crumpled, but I didn't back down. You can't rewrite the past, Mom. You don't get to say sorry and pretend it's fixed. I know. Silence settled between us, thick as wet cement. But maybe I can try to be different now, she said. I didn't respond. I wasn't ready to give her that yet. The injections began 3 days later. They were daily shots in my arms to stimulate my bone marrow. The side effects hit faster than I expected. Aching joints, fatigue, headaches. My body felt like it was made of glass. Daniel sent me a text every evening. Thank you. Thinking of you. You're saving me. I didn't know how to reply. I saved the messages, but I couldn't bring myself to write back. I didn't want gratitude. I wanted recognition. I wanted the girl I was to be seen, the one who was pushed aside year after year, 2 days before. The donation, the hospital held a final pre-op meeting. They went over the risks again. The process was clear. I'd be hooked to a machine that would collect the stem cells from my blood over the course of several hours. Afterward, you may feel exhausted for a few days, the doctor said. You'll need to rest. No physical exertion. No emotional stress if you can help it. I almost laughed. No emotional stress, I muttered. Good luck with that. That night I dreamed of our childhood house. I was back in the hallway outside my mother's bedroom, holding a handmade birthday card. I could hear her laughing inside with Daniel, the sound warm and full. I knocked, and the laughter stopped. What do you want, Amelia? Her voice rang out. I tried to answer, but the words wouldn't come. I woke up crying. The morning of the donation arrived gray and drizzling. The hospital windows fogged with condensation, casting a haze over the city below. Carla met me at the donor center with a warm blanket and a clipboard. You okay? She asked. I'm here, I said. She smiled gently. That's more than enough. The procedure took 6 hours. They hooked me up to a machine through a line in one arm, pulling my blood, separating out the stem cells, and returning the rest through the other arm. I watched the blood swirl in tubes, wondering how something so small could carry so much weight. My mother visited midway through. She didn't say much, just sat quietly beside me, eyes fixed on the tubes, her hands trembling. Daniel came the next day. He walked slowly, still weak, but stronger than he'd been in weeks. They said the transplant went well, he told me. I'm glad. I don't know how to say thank you. Then don't, I said. Just be better. His eyes glistened. I will. I stayed in the hospital one more night for observation. The room was small, quiet, and for the first time since arriving, I felt a strange kind of peace. Like I had wrestled a ghost to the ground and finally stood taller than its shadow. When I checked out, my mother hugged me. Not a stiff, obligatory hug. A real one. I love you, she said. I didn't say it back. Not yet, but I didn't pull away either. The body heals faster than the heart. At least that's what they don't tell you in the discharge papers. Physically, I was cleared to return home within 48 hours, but I wasn't ready to go back. Not to New Jersey, not to the routine I'd built like armor. Instead, I stayed in Philadelphia for a few extra days, walking without direction through the city's old neighborhoods. I needed time, space, and quiet, things I never had growing up. Daniel's condition improved with impressive speed. The doctors called it a textbook response. He smiled more, walked farther, and regained the color in his cheeks. Everyone praised the miracle. No one mentioned me. No one asked how I was feeling. I visited him on the third day after the transplant. He was propped up in bed with a laptop, watching a baseball game with the volume low. "You look less like death," I said, stepping into the room. He grinned. "And you look more like someone who saved a life." I sat down. "Funny, that's not how it feels." His face softened. "Amelia." "I know," I interrupted. "You're grateful. You're sorry. You didn't know what it was like for me growing up." He nodded slowly. "But what now?" I asked. "Where do we go from here?" Daniel closed his laptop. "Wherever you want to go. I just want you in my life again." It sounded simple, too simple. I looked at him, my brother, and realized I didn't know who he really was anymore. Maybe I never did. "You want me in your life," I said, "but that doesn't undo everything that came before. You had the chance to speak up when we were kids. You didn't. I was a kid too. I was a kid alone. That silenced him." I left his room with a knot in my chest and went straight to the hospital chapel, a small, dimly lit space with stained glass and wooden pews. I wasn't religious, but there was something comforting about the silence there. A space where no one expected anything from me. I sat in the second row and let myself feel it all. The exhaustion, the resentment, the quiet yearning for a version of this life where I had been seen from the start. I wanted to scream, to cry, to curl into a ball and sleep for 100 years. But mostly, I wanted to understand why being good, doing the right thing, still felt like losing. The next day, I returned to the hotel, packed my things, and prepared to head back to New Jersey. Before leaving, I stopped by the hospital one last time. Daniel was sleeping, so I didn't wake him. I left a note on his bedside table. I did this because I could. That's the person I choose to be. Take care of yourself, Daniel, and maybe one day we'll get it right. Outside his room, I ran into our mother. "Going home?" she asked. I nodded. "I've done my part." She looked down at the floor. "You've done more than that." I didn't reply. She reached into her bag and handed me a small envelope. "What's this?" "A letter," she said. "Something I wrote a long time ago but never gave you. I wasn't ready. Maybe I'm still not, but I want you to have it." I turned the envelope in my hands. My name, Amelia, written in neat cursive I recognized from birthday cards I never wanted. "I don't know if I'll read it." "That's okay," she said. "You don't have to." Then she did something that surprised me. She reached out and brushed a strand of hair from my face the way mothers do. "You were never useless, Amelia. I was just too broken to see your worth." For a second I thought I might cry, but I didn't. I gave her a small nod, turned around, and walked away. The train ride home was quiet. The scenery passed by like a memory, fields and small towns, and blurry buildings, while I stared out the window, holding the unopened envelope in my lap. I didn't read it that day, or the day after. Back in my apartment, everything felt the same and different at once. The air smelled like old paper and peppermint tea. My plants were still alive. The books on the shelf were right where I left them. But I was different, heavier and lighter at the same time. Layla came over with Chinese takeout. "How was it?" she asked, curling her legs under her on the couch. I didn't know where to start. "I saved him," I said. "He'll live." "And you?" I paused. "I don't know. I feel like part of me died and another part woke up." She nodded like she understood. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a new journal. "For whatever needs writing." I smiled. "You're too good to me. Someone has to be." That night, I finally opened the letter. It was 4 pages long, written in careful handwriting, stained in one corner with what looked like an old teardrop. In it, my mother told me about her fear, not of raising me, but of raising me wrong, about how her parents disapproved of my birth, about how she felt like a failure from the moment I was born, how she thought the only way to survive was to pour all her love into Daniel and pretend the cracks didn't exist. She apologized for everything, not just the past, but the choices that led us there. The last line read, "If you never forgive me, I will understand. But if someday you find it in your heart to try, I'll be here." I folded the letter and placed it in the back of my journal. I wasn't ready to reply, but I also wasn't ready to throw it away. Days turned into weeks. Daniel texted me updates about his recovery. Our mother sent short emails, never too frequent, always signed, "Love, Mom." I didn't always respond. Sometimes I did. Healing is slow, messy, uneven, but it begins somewhere. One Saturday morning I stood in my kitchen, sunlight streaming through the windows, tea steaming in my mug, and for the first time in a long, long time, I felt whole. Forgiveness doesn't come for free. It's not something you just hand out like candy at Halloween. It's earned slowly, not through grand gestures, but through consistency, honesty, and accountability. And I wasn't going to let my family forget that. After everything, after saving Daniel, reading my mother's letter, confronting the man who raised me, and learning the name of the one who didn't, I realized that I had spent most of my life waiting to be chosen, waiting to be seen, waiting for someone else to make it right. That version of me was gone now. A week after my last visit with Daniel, I called my mother. She sounded surprised but hopeful. "Amelia, is everything okay?" "I want to talk," I said. "Of course. I can come to you." "No, I want you to come here, alone." A pause. Then, "All right, just tell me when." We met that Saturday afternoon at my apartment. It was the first time she'd ever stepped inside. She looked around like she was trying to memorize everything. The framed prints on the walls, the overflowing bookshelf, the teapot on the stove. Like she was trying to see who I had become, maybe wondering what she had missed. "You have a beautiful place," she said. "Thanks," I replied, offering her a seat on the couch. "Let's not waste time. I have some things I need to say." She nodded and sat, hands clasped tightly, in her lap. I sat across from her, notebook in hand, not because I needed it, but because it made me feel prepared, in control. "First," I said, "if we're going to try and build anything, and I mean anything, from what's left, I need boundaries." Her eyes widened slightly, but she nodded. "No more rewriting history. No more pretending we were a happy family. If we're going to talk, we talk about the real things. I understand." "Second," I continued, "I don't want apologies unless they come with action. Words are cheap, Mom. I need you to do better, to show up, and not just when it's about Daniel." She looked down, her voice quiet. "I know I've failed you. I don't want pity either. I want respect." She blinked hard. "Okay." "Third," I said, "if we're going to have any relationship, I need you to be open about your past. That means telling me the full truth about James Hall. Everything." Her head lifted sharply. "You found out his name?" Dad told me. "And he gave me an envelope." Her lips pressed together in a thin line. "You said you didn't love him," I said. "Was that true?" She let out a long sigh. "Yes, and no." I frowned. "I was 23, she said. Lonely, reckless. He was charming in the kind of way that disappears the moment things get hard. We had a few wild weeks. Then he left for California. I found out I was pregnant a month later." "Did you try to find him?" She shook her head. "I told myself it wasn't worth it. I was terrified, Amelia. My parents were already furious. I wasn't ready to raise a child. I hated myself for getting into that situation." "And so, you hated me too." Her face twisted with emotion. "No, I hated the reminder. Not you. I didn't know how to separate the two. I tried, but every time I looked at you, all I could see was everything I did wrong. I sat back, absorbing her words. I never wanted you to feel unwanted, she whispered, but you made me feel exactly that. Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't comfort her. Not yet. We sat in silence for a long moment. Then I asked, "Would you help me find him?" She blinked. "James?" I nodded. "I haven't decided if I'll reach out, but I want the option." She reached for her purse and pulled out an old photograph, a grainy image of a man with long hair, a guitar, and a crooked smile. "I kept this," she said softly, "in a box I couldn't open for years." I took it. "Thank you." After she left, I stared at the photo for hours. What would I even say if I found him? "Hi, I'm your daughter. Surprise. I don't want money or a relationship, just answers." Was that even true, or did I want more? Layla came by that evening. I showed her the photo. "He looks like you," she said, holding it next to my face. "That's what scares me." She placed it gently on the table. "So what are you going to do?" "I'm going to start with conditions." That Monday, I sent my mother an email, a list of terms, written clearly and without apology. Things like, "I don't want to hear comparisons between me and Daniel. I won't tolerate guilt-tripping or manipulation. I expect honesty, even if it's uncomfortable. I will not be responsible for your healing, only my own." She replied the next morning, "Agreed. All of it. I'm willing to learn. I just hope it's not too late." Daniel called later that week. "I heard Mom came to see you," he said. "She did. She's different." "She's trying," I replied. "So am I." "Good. Because I want us to try too." I smiled faintly. "Then I have conditions." He laughed. "Of course you do. Hit me. Don't treat me like a footnote. If I share something, listen. Don't talk over me. Don't tell me how to feel." "I can do that," he said. "Anything else?" "No more pretending we were best friends growing up." He was quiet for a second. "Fair." A week later, we had lunch together, just the two of us. No hospitals, no hushed tones or medical charts. Just sandwiches at a park near the rehab center. He brought a chessboard. I brought snacks. We laughed. We argued. It was normal. The kind of normal I didn't think we could have. And somewhere in that, I felt the beginning of something new. Not erasure of the past, but a future not ruled by it. Back home, I picked up the photograph of James Hall again. I flipped it over. A date was scrawled on the back, June 1987, Philadelphia. It was a starting point. And for once, I didn't feel like I was chasing a ghost. I felt like I was chasing myself. It didn't matter how many people said I was brave, no matter how many nurses thanked me, or how many neighbors sent flowers, or how many times Daniel told me I had saved his life. There was still a quiet, unsettled place inside me. A place that couldn't be healed with praise. Because I didn't do it for them, I did it for me. And even now, weeks after the transplant, my body still reminded me of it every morning, with soreness in my back, fatigue in my bones, and the strange echo of having given something away that I could never get back. The press found out. Someone at the hospital must have leaked the story. Estranged sister saves brother's life with bone marrow donation. The headline was catchy. They included a picture of me walking into the hospital, taken from afar, my face half obscured by a scarf. I hadn't even known it had been taken. Daniel called, apologetic. I didn't know they were going to run it. I didn't say anything. "I believe you," I said. "Doesn't mean I'm not furious." It wasn't the story that bothered me. It was the version they told. The article painted me as some long-lost sibling who'd heroically stepped in to save her beloved brother. It glossed over the years of silence, the abandonment, the pain. It ignored the complicated truth and made me into a symbol. I wasn't a symbol. I was a survivor of rejection, of emotional neglect, of self-doubt so deeply rooted that it took years to name it. But the public didn't want survivors. They wanted heroes. Layla texted me, "Do you want me to write an angry email to the editor? I'll do it." I smiled, grateful. No, let it go, but I couldn't. Not entirely. That article reached people from my past, people who hadn't spoken to me since high school. I got messages from old classmates, distant cousins, even a teacher from freshman year. Some were supportive, others felt performative. One message stood out. I always knew you had something special in you. Glad your family finally saw it. Wanted to scream. Where were they when I was 15, crying in the library bathroom during lunch? Where were they when I was invisible? My mother, surprisingly, was angry too. I told them not to talk to the press, she said over the phone. You didn't deserve to be exposed like that. For once, we were aligned. They don't get to reduce my pain to a headline, I told her. You're right. And for the first time, I believe she meant it. Meanwhile, Daniel's recovery continued. We texted often, sometimes spoke by phone, occasionally met for coffee or walks. We talked about silly things, music, food, old cartoons we used to watch. Slowly, we were building something that resembled a relationship. He didn't push me for more than I could give, and that mattered. One night, I got an unexpected call. It was from a man named Henry Lowell, a retired social worker from Philadelphia, who had worked in local music venues back in the 80s. I saw the article, he said, and the name James Hall jumped out at me. I sat up straighter. You knew him? I did. Not well, but I booked shows for local bands back then. James played guitar. He was talented, wild, had a temper. My heart pounded. Do you know where he is? A pause. Last I heard, he moved out west. Oregon, maybe. Opened a small studio. Dropped off the map in the early 2000s. But if he's still around, I'd start there. He gave me a name of a town and a possible studio. Thank you, I said. You're welcome, he replied. For what it's worth, he always talked about a girl he let get away. Said he regretted it. That night, I told Layla, are you going to look for him? I think I have to, I said. Even if I never meet him, even if I never tell him who I am. I need to see for myself. She nodded. I'll help you book the flight. I didn't go right away. First, I needed to do something that scared me even more. I needed to visit the place where everything began, the house I grew up in. It was still there, still white with navy shutters, still perfectly manicured. My mother had moved out after the divorce, but the couple who lived there now let me walk the yard when I explained who I was. Stood on the porch where I once waited for someone to say I mattered. I walked through the backyard where Daniel had learned to ride a bike while I watched from the kitchen window. I touched the swing that once creaked under the weight of our childhood. Summers, and I let myself feel it all, the grief, the anger, the deep, aching loneliness. Then I let it go. That weekend, I boarded a flight to Oregon. The town was small, the kind with one main street, a coffee shop, and a hardware store. The air smelled like pine and wood smoke. It was quiet in a way I hadn't expected. I found the studio easily, Hall & Sons recording. My heart stuttered. Sons? I stepped inside. A young man with curly hair and a bass guitar nodded at me. Hey, you looking to book time? I'm looking for James Hall. He raised an eyebrow. My dad? I nodded. Hang on, he said, disappearing into the back. A minute later, a man appeared, older, weathered, silver in his beard. His eyes locked on mine, and something passed between us. Recognition, instinct, I couldn't be sure. Can I help you? He asked. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. I'm sorry, I said. I think you might be my father. For a long moment, James Hall didn't say anything. He just stared at me, his expression unreadable, not confused, not angry, not relieved, just still, like someone trying to make sense of a language he hadn't heard in decades. I'm sorry, I said again, standing in the middle of the studio. I shouldn't have come like this. He took a breath, then motioned to a worn leather chair near the mixing board. No, it's okay. Sit down. I sat. He stayed standing. I'm James, he said, voice steady. I'm Amelia, His brow furrowed. "What's your mother's name?" "Olivia Blackwell." Back then she was Olivia Hart. That name, Hart, made something in his face crack. He sat across from me slowly, nodding, eyes clouded. "I remember Olivia. I was born in April 1988, I said. She told me, you left before she found out she was pregnant." He closed his eyes and ran a hand through his thinning hair. "Jesus Christ. I'm not here to cause problems," I said quickly. "I don't want anything from you. I just wanted to know." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I never knew. I swear to you. If I had, I would have done something. I was young and stupid, but I wouldn't have walked away from a child." I believed him. Maybe because I wanted to, or maybe because something in his voice sounded too raw to be a lie. We talked for hours. He told me about his life, the years spent bouncing from band to band, the gigs that never led anywhere, the drinking, the rehab, the eventual decision to build a quiet life in Oregon. He'd married once, divorced after 5 years, had a son, the young man I'd seen when I walked in. "I was a wreck for a long time," he said. "I kept thinking I'd messed up something big. Now I know I was right." "I'm not here to punish you," I said. "I just wanted to see your face, hear your voice." "Do you want to talk to your brother?" he asked. That word, brother, hit different, not like Daniel, not someone who had shaped my life by his presence and absence. This was a stranger who shared blood but not history. "Maybe one day," I said. "Not today." He nodded. "Do you want a relationship?" he asked quietly. I didn't answer right away. "I don't know," I admitted. "I just needed to meet you, on my terms." Before I left, he walked me to the door. "You look like her," he said. "But there's something else. You've got your own fire." I smiled faintly. "That's mine. I built it myself." Back home, things moved quickly. Daniel's doctors called to confirm that his bone marrow transplant was taking. His white blood cell count had stabilized, and he was responding better than they had predicted. They called it a successful operation. But no one talked about the other operation, the one that had taken place inside me. The surgery of truth, the excavation of the past, because I had changed too. One night, Daniel and I met up again. We took a long walk through the park, crisp leaves crunching beneath our feet. "I heard you went to Oregon," he said. I nodded. "I met him." "And?" He didn't know. He seemed decent, messed up, but real. "You gonna see him again?" "Maybe." Daniel shoved his hands in his coat pockets. "I used to think you were the mystery in the family, the distant one. But now I wonder if we were all just too afraid to really look at you." I raised an eyebrow. "You were too busy looking in the mirror." He laughed. "Yeah, that too." Weeks passed. Our mother started therapy, voluntarily. She told me about it in an email. "I don't expect this to fix everything, but I'm tired of hiding from myself." That was new. Daniel returned to part-time work. I visited the library again for the first time in months. Layla got a promotion and took me out to celebrate. And through it all, I felt something building. In me, a center, a spine, a voice. On a quiet Sunday morning, I sat at my kitchen table and wrote a letter. To whom it may concern, I am writing not as a daughter or a sister or a donor, but as myself. This is my truth, not the one people assumed, not the one printed in headlines, but the one I lived. I was unwanted, I was invisible, and I survived. I saved a life, not because they deserved it, but because I did. Because I am not who they said I was, I am more. I folded the letter and placed it in the back of my journal. Maybe one day I'd share it, maybe not. But for the first time in a long time, I knew that my story wasn't theirs anymore. It was mine. Recovery doesn't happen all at once. It's not a single day where everything clicks into place. It's a slow, uneven climb, filled with backsliding, stillness, and moments where the pain feels distant enough to call progress. And sometimes progress looks like walking away. Sometimes healing means creating space, even from the people who claim they've changed. After returning from Oregon, I kept mostly to myself. I didn't return every call. I didn't answer every message, not because I was angry, but because I was tired. Tired of being the one who held everything together, the one who gave second chances before people even asked for them. Daniel noticed first. "You okay?" he asked during a short phone call one afternoon. "I'm good," I said, and meant it. "You've been quiet." "I've been thinking." About him? About everything. Daniel was recovering physically faster than anyone expected. He'd gained weight, regained strength, and was beginning to plan for the future again. He mentioned going back to school part-time, volunteering at the hospital that saved his life, maybe even writing about what happened. "I want to tell the story right," he said, "not the way the media did." I nodded. "If you're going to write it, tell the truth." "All of it?" I looked at him. "Especially the parts that hurt." Our mother was different too, more careful with her words, slower to speak, faster to listen. She began asking questions instead of assuming answers, and for the first time in my life, she apologized without attaching a justification. She showed up to my apartment once with soup and flowers. "I'm not here to fix anything," she said. "Just wanted to say I was thinking of you." I let her in. We sat and talked for nearly 2 hours, mostly about small things, books, weather, the odd man who lived in her new building. But at the end, she looked at me and said, "I still have a lot to learn." I believed her, but I still didn't trust her completely, and that was okay. The real change was happening inside me. There was a quiet power in saying no, in choosing rest over obligation, in letting relationships breathe without trying to control the outcome. For the first time in years, I started drawing again, sketching late into the night. Faces, rooms, memories. Sometimes I drew my childhood bedroom the way I wished it had looked. Sometimes I drew my family, not as they were, but as they might have been. In one drawing, I gave myself wings. I also started therapy. It wasn't something I had planned. But one morning, I passed a sign outside a community center. Free, trauma support groups, Thursdays at 7 p.m. I stood staring at it for a long time before finally writing down the number. The group was small, 6 people. A woman who had lost her daughter, a man estranged from his father, a teenager who never felt like he belonged anywhere, a soldier, a teacher, me. Each of us carried something invisible, and in that room, for 1 hour a week, we were allowed to say the things no one else wanted to hear. I told them about being the unwanted child, about saving my brother, about meeting my father, James, and feeling nothing and everything at once. No one interrupted, no one flinched, just silence, then nods. Then at the end, someone said, "Thank you." A few weeks later, James emailed me. It was short. "Hi, Amelia, I've been thinking about you." I didn't want to push, but I'd like to stay in touch, at whatever pace you choose. If you want to talk, or visit, or just write, I'm here. James, I didn't respond right away. I read it a few times, then closed the browser and went for a walk. I wasn't sure if I was ready, but it meant something that he asked, that he offered, that he didn't demand. One chilly evening, Daniel invited me to dinner. Just us, no fanfare, no celebration. He cooked badly, burnt the chicken, undercooked the rice, but we laughed the whole way through it. At one point, he looked across the table and said, "You saved my life. I'll never be able to repay that." "You don't have to," I said. "I know," he replied, "but I'm going to try anyway." We toasted with cheap wine and shared a story neither of us could have imagined just a year before. But for all the peace that was growing, I still needed distance, even from Daniel, even from my mother, even from James. Not forever, just for now, because there are wounds that don't need attention, they need space. I took a weekend trip to the coast, alone. I left my phone in the hotel room. I walked for hours on the beach. I let the wind pull my hair into chaos. I breathed in salt and silence. I stood at the edge of the water and yelled, Not words, just sound, just life. And no one silenced me. On the last night there, I sat by the fire pit, outside my small rental cabin, and wrote in my journal, I don't need to be anyone's hero. I don't need to fix what I didn't break. I am not the story they used to tell. I am the story I choose to live. I closed the journal and smiled. When I returned to the city, I checked my email. There was a second message from James. Hey, I understand if you're not ready. Just letting you know I'm still here, and I'm proud of you, even if I've only just met you. I replied, I'm not ready for a big connection yet, but I think I'm ready to write. Let's start with letters. One truth at a time. Some words live better on paper than in conversation. Spoken aloud, they twist, lose shape, get drowned out by tone or tears or defenses rising too quickly. But written, quiet, unassuming, permanent, they carry the weight of truth, unbothered by interruptions or time. That's how the letter began. Not as a plan, not as a confrontation, just a need. It started on a rainy Thursday evening. I was sorting through old boxes, journals, photographs, scribbled drawings from my teenage years. I found a crumpled sheet of paper tucked between the pages of a high school literature book. My handwriting, in shaky ink. I wish I mattered to you the way he does. Just that. No greeting, no signature. A letter that never made it past the first sentence. I sat down on the floor, the page in my hand, and thought, what would I write now? That night, I opened a fresh page in my journal and began. Dear Mom, there's a version of me that still stands in the kitchen, holding a report card filled with A's while you praise Daniel's swimming trophy. There's a version of me who watched you braid his hair before school and wondered why you never touched mine. A version who begged silently to be noticed, only to become an expert at disappearing. I don't write this to make you feel guilty. I write this because it's what I needed to say for years. I didn't stop. The words poured out like water from a cracked dam. You didn't have to be perfect. You just had to be present. You didn't have to understand everything. You just had to try. I stopped calling you Mom in my head for a while. You became her, or Olivia, or just silence. When Daniel got sick, I thought I'd say no. Not to hurt you, but to protect myself. Because everything in me still believed I was disposable, and yet I showed up. I didn't save him for you. I did it for me, because I refused to let your absence define what kind of person I became. I wrote for hours. I wrote about the birthday parties where I blew out candles alone, about the school, plays where I scanned the crowd and never saw your face, about how I used to pretend I had another family somewhere else, one that would find me one day and explain everything had been a mistake. I wrote about meeting James, about hearing his voice, about realizing that even he, the man who never knew I existed, gave me something you didn't: curiosity, interest, willingness. And then I wrote this. But here's what I know now. People do terrible things when they are scared. And you were scared. You were young, overwhelmed, and convinced that loving me meant facing parts of yourself you weren't ready to see. I get that now. And I don't hate you. But I won't forget. I won't pretend none of it happened. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It's remembering without letting it own me. When I finished the letter, the pages trembled in my hands, not because I was uncertain, but because I had finally said everything. I folded the letter, placed it in an envelope, wrote Mom on the front, then placed it in a drawer and didn't send it. A few days later, we met for coffee. She looked better, softer. There was less tension in her hands when she held the cup, less defensiveness in her posture. How are you? She asked. I'm okay, I said. We talked about Daniel's latest health report, another round of good news. We talked about my work, her therapy. We talked like two people learning each other for the first time. I didn't mention the letter. I didn't need to. I had already released it. Later that night, I wrote a second letter, this time to myself. Dear Amelia, you survived. Not just the surgery, not just the family. You survived doubt. You survived being overlooked, undervalued, forgotten. You survived yourself. The voice that told you you weren't enough. You were always enough. I'm sorry it took you this long to see it, but now that you do, never let it go. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You don't need to be useful to be worthy. You just need to be you, and that is more than enough. The next morning, I mailed that letter to myself. When it arrived, 3 days later, I opened it with reverence, and I cried, not because it hurt, but because it didn't. Daniel texted me that afternoon. Therapist said I should write a letter to myself too. I told her my sister already beat me to it. You'll thank me later, I replied. At the end of the week, I walked into the hospital again, this time not for a transplant, but for a volunteer orientation, because I wanted to give, not out of guilt or obligation, but because I had something to offer now: experience, empathy, strength. At the end of the orientation, they gave me a badge, Amelia Blackwell Volunteer, Survivor Mentor, and for the first time in my life, I looked at my name and didn't feel like an imposter. Apologies are strange things. When you need them the most, they rarely come. And when they finally do, they arrive like unexpected guests, either too late to fix anything or right on time to change everything. I didn't expect hers, not anymore. Not after everything had settled into this fragile peace we were quietly rebuilding. I thought we'd keep skating along this surface, polite, careful, mutual in our silence about the past. But then she showed up at my door. It was a Wednesday evening. I had just finished folding laundry, the kind of mundane, grounding task I'd learned to appreciate. The knock was soft, tentative. When I opened the door, my mother stood there with her coat wrapped tight and something unreadable in her eyes. I know I should have called, she said, but if I had, I might have talked myself out of it. I stepped aside. Come in. She entered quietly, like someone entering sacred ground. She didn't sit right away. She walked to the bookshelf, ran her fingers over the spines, paused at the framed photo of me and Layla at the beach. Then she turned to face me. I need to say something, she said. I nodded. She sat, took a breath, and began. When I had you, I thought I had ruined my life. Her voice cracked. I told myself that for years, that you were the beginning of every wrong turn I took. And because I believed it, I treated you like a mistake I had to correct. Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't see you, Amelia. Not really. I saw everything I hated about myself. And I poured all my hope, all my love into Daniel because I thought that would balance it out. She looked up at me, but it didn't. It only made things worse. I didn't speak. Not yet. She needed to finish. I've been in therapy now for 4 months, she continued. I go twice a week, and every time my therapist asks me the same question. What would you say to the little girl in Amelia that still needs her mother? She choked back a sob. I haven't had an answer until now. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small envelope. I wrote her a letter. She handed it to me. I held it in my lap. I don't expect you to read it, she said, but I needed to write it. For her. For you. For me. Silence stretched between us. Then she whispered, I'm sorry. Not the kind of sorry said through clenched teeth. Not the kind whispered in guilt. It was raw, full, earned. I stared at the envelope. My hands trembled slightly as I turned it over. To the girl I never protected. Written in her cursive handwriting, familiar but different, more careful, more human. I didn't open it, not right away. Instead, I looked at her and said, Thank you. She nodded, her expression soft. You don't owe me anything. No, I said. That's why I'm still here. We talked for hours that night, not just about the past, but about the present. She told me about the guilt she still carried, about the dreams she had where I was a child again, and she could do it all differently. about the long nights she sat awake wondering how I could still speak to her. I told her the truth, because I needed to be free. Free from me. Free from needing anything from you. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. Do you think there's hope? For what? For something real between us? Now. I looked at her, this woman who had once been a shadow in my story, distant, cold, unreachable. Now she sat before me, broken, remorseful, trying. I don't know what will be, I said, but this is a start. After she left, I sat with the letter. I didn't open it that night, but I held it close. It was enough to know it existed, that she had written it not because she had to, but because she chose to. That weekend, I shared the story in group therapy. Not the full letter. Not her exact words, just the moment, the knock on the door, the apology, the letter addressed to a version of me that still ached. They listened quietly. Then someone said, "That's one of the most powerful things I've ever heard." Another added, "You deserve that letter. You always did." And I believed them. Later that night, I called James. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, I'm ready," I said. "For what?" "To visit. Not just to visit you, but to meet your son." There was a pause. "He's asked about you. He saw your photo in the studio." "What did you tell him?" "The truth. That he has a sister, and that she's strong as hell." I smiled. "I'll book a flight." 2 weeks later, I flew back to Oregon. This time, not for answers, not for identity, but for connection. His son, my half-brother, was kind, awkward, funny in a dry, unexpected way. He played the piano like magic. We talked about music and art and books, and somewhere in that conversation, I realized something. I didn't need to be the abandoned girl anymore. I didn't need to be the replacement or the outsider. I was just me. And that was enough. On the plane home, I finally opened my mother's letter. It wasn't long, just a few pages, handwritten and sincere. "I didn't know how to love you back then, but I've learned how to love you now, and I hope someday the woman you've become will let me. Not because you owe me that chance, but because I am finally becoming the mother you deserved all along." I pressed the letter to my chest and closed my eyes, not crying, just breathing, letting it land. Letting it live inside me, not to define me, but to remind me. Even broken people can grow, even fractured bonds can mend, and sometimes the apology finally comes. They used to call me the quiet one, the forgettable one, the background, the shadow in Daniel's spotlight, the girl who would be fine on her own, the daughter who didn't need as much, the sister who never caused trouble. What they really meant was the one we didn't have to pay attention to. And for a long time, I believed that narrative. I made it my armor, my identity, until I didn't. The morning after I returned from Oregon, I woke up before the sun. I brewed tea, opened the curtains, sat by the window in silence, and I cried. But not out of sadness, not even relief. I cried because for the first time I could feel myself fully, not just surviving, but standing, present, accounted for, unapologetically whole. No longer needed anyone to tell me I was strong. I had already proven it to myself, quietly, persistently, through every decision I made when no one was watching. I didn't need to be useful to matter. I didn't need to be the savior or the sacrifice. Didn't need to explain my worth because I was done negotiating for space in people's lives. Daniel called that afternoon. He wanted to talk about starting a podcast, a platform to share recovery stories from both patients and donors. "You don't have to be involved," he said, "but I'd love for you to be the first episode." I hesitated. "I want to tell the whole truth," I said, "not just the part where I saved your life." He laughed. "That's the only reason I want you. The whole truth is the only story worth telling." I agreed, and we recorded it in a single take. A few days later, I walked through the hospital halls wearing my volunteer badge. A nurse waved. A patient in recovery smiled. A mother mouthed the words, "Thank you," as I passed. This time, I didn't feel like an imposter. I felt like someone who had earned her place, not by being perfect, but by showing up consistently as herself. At home, I started painting again. Not just sketches, not therapy, but full pieces. Bold, messy, unapologetic. Canvases of color and movement and feeling. I filled the apartment with them, hung some, gifted a few. Burned one or two I hated. It wasn't about the final result. It was about creating something I didn't need permission to make. One night, I called my mother. "I want to tell you something," I said. She was quiet, listening. "I'm not angry anymore," I continued. "Not in the way I was, but I need you to know. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting." "I know," she said, "and I don't expect you to. I still have scars, so do I." And just like that, for the first time, we weren't talking from wounds. We were talking from growth. James sent me a painting. His son had made it. Abstract, in dark greens and silver tones. A note attached read, "We're all learning how to love in our own language. Thank you for teaching me a new one." J.I. framed it. Sometimes I still think about that little girl version of me. The one who stood in doorways waiting to be seen. The one who clutched crayon drawings and report cards like they were tickets to be noticed. And that was enough. On the plane home, I finally opened my mother's letter. It wasn't long, just a few pages, handwritten and sincere. "I didn't know how to love you back then, but I've learned how to love you now, and I hope someday the woman you've become will let me. Not because you owe me that chance, but because I am finally becoming the mother you deserved all along." I pressed the letter to my chest and closed my eyes. Not crying, just breathing. Letting it land. Letting it live inside me. Not to define me, but to remind me, even broken people can grow. Even fractured bonds can mend. And sometimes the apology finally comes. They used to call me the quiet one, the forgettable one. The background, the shadow in Daniel's spotlight. The girl who would be fine on her own. The daughter who didn't need as much. The sister who never caused trouble. What they really meant was the one we didn't have to pay attention to. And for a long time, I believed that narrative. I made it my armor, my identity, until I didn't. The morning after I returned from Oregon, I woke up before the sun. I brewed tea, opened the curtains, sat by the window in silence, and I cried, but not out of sadness, not even relief. I cried because for the first time I could feel myself fully, not just surviving, but standing, present, accounted for, unapologetically whole. No longer needed anyone to tell me I was strong. I had already proven it to myself, quietly, persistently, through every decision I made when no one was watching. I didn't need to be useful to matter. I didn't need to be the savior or the sacrifice. I didn't need to explain my worth, because I was done negotiating for space in people's lives. Daniel called that afternoon. He wanted to talk about starting a podcast, a platform to share recovery stories from both patients and donors. "You don't have to be involved," he said, "but I'd love for you to be the first episode." I hesitated. "I want to tell the whole truth," I said, "not just the part where I saved your life." He laughed. "That's the only reason I want you. The whole truth is the only story worth telling." I agreed, and we recorded it in a single take. A few days later, I walked through the hospital halls wearing my volunteer badge. A nurse waved, a patient in recovery smiled. A mother mouthed the words, "Thank you," as I passed. This time I didn't feel like an imposter. I felt like someone who had earned her place, not by being perfect, but by showing up consistently as herself. At home, I started painting again, not just sketches, not therapy, but full pieces, bold, messy, unapologetic, canvases of color and movement and feeling. I filled the apartment with them, hung some, gifted a few. burned one or two I hated. It wasn't about the final result. It was about creating something I didn't need permission to make. One night I called my mother. "I want to tell you something," I said. She was quiet, listening. "I'm not angry anymore," I continued. "Not in the way I was. But I need you to know, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting." "I know," she said, "and I don't expect you to. I still have scars. So do I." And just like that, for the first time, we weren't talking from wounds. We were talking from growth. James sent me a painting. His son had made it. Abstract, in dark greens and silver tones. A note attached read, "We're all learning how to love in our own language. Thank you for teaching me a new one." J.I. framed it. Sometimes I still think about that little girl version of me. The one who stood in doorways, waiting to be seen. The one who clutched crayon drawings and report cards like they were tickets to be noticed. I don't hate her anymore. I honor her. She kept going. She became me. On the last page of my journal I wrote, "My mother used to say I was useless, but I know the truth now. I was unbreakable. I am unbreakable, and I never needed their permission to shine."